All right. Well, thanks again for attending the John Wall Street Sports and Media track here at iGaming. For those of you who are just getting here, I am Corey Leff. Many more people know me as John Wall Street. I write a newsletter under that pseudonym. The newsletter is read by the most influential people across sports and media and finance. And the goal of the newsletter is to provide context and analysis and perspective and try to make people a little bit smarter each day. We're going to try to do that in our next session here with Joey Levy. The next session is going to be focused on micro betting, which enables fans to bet on individual moments within a game unrelated to the final score. It's the fastest growing segment of the in-play category, could represent $20 billion worth of handle by 2027, altering the way fans consume sports in the process. Here to shed some light on the subject is Betr founder and CEO Joey Levy. Joey also founded SimpleBet, a tech provider which powers microbetting for a host of US operators. Welcome, Joey.
Good to be here.
So at one point, microbetting was touted as the industry's next big thing. I guess the first question is that still the case?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is it at one point?
Yeah, is that still the case? Can you put some context on where we are with regards to in-play and micro-betting in terms of handle and activity and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so definitely still, if not the next big thing, one of the next big things in this industry from my point of view, and really the data supports that. So. And I'm gonna, as you just alluded to, so I'm currently the founder and CEO of Betr, which is a direct-to-consumer sports gaming company and media business. Microbetting is a part of our business, but it's not the entirety or even the core of our business at this point. But prior to this, I started a company called SimpleBet, where it is core to their business, and SimpleBet has essentially pioneered microbetting on U.S. sports for the U.S. market. So obviously, have seen sort of the creation and evolution in the early days. It's still the very early days of microbetting in this market. So what I know from SimpleBet data, and I wanted to get the most recent data that and confirm that they were comfortable with me sharing this with this group, is that 15 to 35% of the in-play betting handle that SimpleBet's operating partners see right now, and SimpleBet is integrated with 5 of the big 8 operators. So DraftKings, Caesars, ESPN Bet, Hard Rock Bet, Bet365 are some of their clients. So 15 to 35% of their total in-play betting handle is powered by SimpleBet with their micro markets. In terms of specific adoption, Major League Baseball is at the higher end of that, which intuitively makes sense because if you think of the cadence and composition of baseball, it's very stop and start, a little bit slower. There's a lot of discrete occurrences to bet on. There's pitches and at-bats. The next most popular sports are American football, so NFL and CFB. So micro markets currently represent about 25% of the total in-play handle with SimpleBet's customers for American football. NBA, I remember when we launched with our operating partners, it was pretty small, to be honest, which also intuitively makes sense because NBA is a more fluid game without as many discrete occurrences, but nevertheless, it's really grown significantly year over year. And what we're also seeing is that the handle year over year growth is pretty impressive. I think it's about 1.5 to 2.5x growth year over year, but the active user adoption is outpacing that. So you're seeing about 2.5 to 3.5x year over year growth on the amount of users that are using microbetting, which also intuitively makes sense because in the beginning there were these whale customers who were really hammering these markets, and now it's getting more casual fan adoption. So for example, I think the data is from 2022. You had roughly 10% of MAUs of SimpleBet's operating partners were using micro betting, and in 2023 it bolted up to 15%. So it's strong year over year growth, but what's really exciting about this data is we're still in the very early days of this, and one of the reasons, if not the primary reason I started Betr was because I didn't feel like the existing D2C operators were doing nearly a good enough job presenting the user experience around micro betting, marketing micro betting, educating their consumers, innovating against the single screen experience. So my point is, despite the fact that I think the UX isn't good, the marketing isn't good, the media, the original content that gets consumers excited about this isn't very good. Despite all of this, it's powering billions of handle, and it's become relatively ubiquitous in the category. So I think that all speaks to just how important micro betting will be to the US sports betting market. It's super, super nascent right now, so we're very excited about it.
I should have started the conversation. We buried the lead. Joey's company, Betr, yesterday, fresh off of a new $375 million valuation. So congrats to Joey. You mentioned 15 to 35% of in-play right now is micro betting. How does that compare to more more mature regulated markets?
Yeah, I think what's exciting about this is, so one of the key insights with Simplebet, and the reason why we decided to go after micro betting, is in global regulated mature markets, the content that was most popular is soccer, right? And if you think of the cadence and composition of a soccer match, it's very fluid. There's not really any discrete occurrences or moments to bet on. There's not a lot of scoring. But if you think of the cadence of US sports, they're very stop and start, moment to moment, a lot of scoring and speculation over players and what they'll do next. So it's kind of apples and oranges if you want to compare it to the global marketplace. Micro betting will always be a US sort of native product, which is exciting because we don't really know how big it could be, right? Like, I think there could be a world where if some of these headwinds like poor user experience, poor marketing and education, broadcast latency, if these things that inevitably will be solved are solved, micro betting could end up still being the predominant way people bet on sports in this country. It just may need to be on a little bit longer of a time horizon because some of these challenges need to be addressed. I think another thing that I do want to mention, and we've spoken about this a little bit as well, is that the industry from a product perspective loves to talk about same game parlays and parlay betting, but imagine if you can introduce instant gratification to the parlay betting experience with micro parlays. Mm-hmm. So an example of that would be a current micro market is you're betting on Aaron Judge to hit a home run in his next at bat, right? But imagine if you could now bet on that home run, on Aaron Judge hitting a home run off the fourth pitch, off a curveball with a velocity of 76 to 80 miles per hour, and it lands into right field with a distance of like 400 to 405 feet, right? Then you're able to offer a casual customer who's particularly interested in these lower probability but high payout multiple outcomes, 5,000 to 1 odds on that on every pitch and every at bat. So micro parlays may actually end up being more popular than the core micro market experience. And very rudimentary V0 versions of that are available now, but it will consistently get better over time, and it's very exciting, and I'm excited for the sort of mainstream adoption of this to continue to accelerate over the coming decade or so.
The micro parlay concept, we'll circle back to that in a second, but I think it's very much along the same lines of what Howard and Roger and co were talking about in the previous session, where it's about betting for entertainment, right? You put down a little money and you have a chance to win big. Yep. and it gets you more engaged in the...
Yeah, it's a win-win, right? Like, I remember when this industry was rolling out, you had, assumptions that the GGR margin would be 5 to 10%, right? But you could have a significantly higher GGR margin as an operator while still providing even more entertainment value to the consumer by focusing on these lower probability but really high payout multiple outcomes.
So you mentioned there's a bunch of, challenges, if you called them, to in-play or to micro betting. What are some of the catalysts that would spur the growth of micro betting and in-play?
Yeah, I think most important thing, and this isn't just unique to micro betting, it's unique to the entire sports gaming industry, not just sports betting, but fantasy sports and even iGaming to some extent, is that the front end UI UX around gaming right now is just very antiquated, and it's not simple or intuitive enough for casual fans. Like, I remember the reason I first got involved in this category is I try to bet on sports, and I thought it would be sort of this easy, like, multiple choice question, like, I think the Dolphins are going to beat the Jets, but I was presented this thing like -175 money line or 49.50/U on an interface that feels like a spreadsheet, and it just felt like there's no way a casual customer who is already hesitant to engage in the experience to begin with is going to dive into that, right? That's why I view Betr from a UI UX perspective as almost like the Robin Hood to the gambling industry's E-Trade, Fidelity, Charles Schwab. I very much view the current operators like FanDuel and DraftKings, their core experience is like the E-Trade of this industry. And somebody will build the Robin Hood of gambling to, you know, make this a more frictionless experience. So as it pertains to micro betting, if we're going to expand the TAM and add more casual fans, the UI UX needs to be executed in a way that it's simple and intuitive enough for anybody to pick up the product and interact with it. Broadcast latency is another big problem, but it will get solved. Technology exists for it to be solved, and I think the leagues and the media companies are starting to realize that the incremental engagement that they get from sports betting and in-play betting in particular is a significant driver of just incremental value for them, right? I mean, just to use the NFL media rights deal as an example, over $100 billion over 10 years. If you could increase engagement by an incremental 10 to 25%, and I think that's being conservative with what this could unlock. You're talking about tens of billions of dollars of incremental value. So I do think the powers that be will ultimately make zero latency streaming more ubiquitous. So those are like the two key things that come to mind, not to mention sort of the lack of education and marketing around this, but Betr is pretty focused on that. And DraftKings, to their credit, has been a lot more focused on it too, using some of their existing media assets to educate consumers on some of the micro market options that they have.
In terms of micro markets, when does this become kind of a factor? When is it going to become kind of prevalent across the industry, and what kind of lift can it give to gross gaming revenues? Do we have any projections?
I mean, it's already relevant, right? I mean, I would say 15 to 35% of in-play handle, and depending upon the operator, in-play handle is probably anywhere from 30 to 50% of their total handle today. Regulated mature markets, you see 70% plus. So it's already relevant, but what is very exciting about it is there's so much room for growth with the product, particularly with micro parlays coming up and solving all of these headwinds. So I think it'll be significant year-over-year growth across both handle and active user adoption. No specific projections at this time. I mean, I think within the next couple of years, you're probably going to have at least $10 billion of handle powered by micro betting. So, but what gets me really excited, not just about micro betting, but this market in general, is that there's a significant incremental TAM opportunity in general with new customers who aren't already currently in the category, and that's hard to quantify. So, for example, FanDuel and DraftKings combined from anywhere from 5 to 10 million monthly active users. They're in front of well over 100 million gambling age sports fans. I'm not saying all of that incremental 95 million or 90 million customers should be in this category or will want to be in this category, but there's a world where 25 million MAUs are in this category, which is 2.5 to 5x what we currently have. So the incremental TAM opportunity is something that I don't think we speak enough about, and I think is a reason why this 30, 40, $50 billion sort of annual GGR projection that the banks are putting out there actually is probably conservative if product innovation keeps going the way that it's going.
It's a good pivot. You talk about finding new consumers. The new consumers are probably casual bettors who are looking for entertainment. So how does that understanding impact what you're doing now and Betr's short-form content strategy?
Sure. So the most important thing to getting the casual fan from my perspective is the UI UX. I know I've spoken about it already for a few minutes here, but I can't overstate just how important it is and how big of a problem this is that existing FanDuel Sportsbook, DraftKings Sportsbook, really most of the sportsbooks that are effectively offering this commoditized experience that started in brick and mortar and was kind of put on the internet and now put in a mobile phone, it's not engaging or intuitive to people who've never done it before. So I think first, providing a product that is simple and intuitive enough for people to engage with that have not engaged with it before is the most important thing. Then, from a distribution perspective, I don't think any of the existing operators who really have a shot at competing in this marketplace do a good enough job of catering to the next generation of sports fans. Their marketing is kind of like DraftKings Sportsbook, risk-free bet, we're the brand where you could come and gamble. But I don't think that's going to be good enough, right? That blunt force marketing, it's certainly working. These are high LTV users, and the CAC is high, but the LTV is higher. So it's working, and they've built a phenomenal business, and they're going to keep building a great business. But I think if you're a new brand that's trying to cater to a new demographic, you got to be more creative with your distribution. So at Betr, we're really focused on original short-form video content built for the next generation of sports fans in a way where we're not just focused on brand awareness like DraftKings and FanDuel are with, you know, their advertising efforts that are quite literally with the frequency of like car insurance companies, right? It's more getting brand affinity, loyalty. We're developing characters. We like to talk about how we're not just reposting culture like all the other sports media companies that post the same highlights with the same captions and the same memes, but we're creating culture by developing our own characters with their own personalities that our audience has a relationship with.
So you talk about building characters, leveraging comedy, which sounds a lot like the Barstool model, right? But their integration with Penn didn't work, or at least not as planned. What were you guys able to learn from that relationship, and what are you doing differently to avoid the same fate?
Yeah, I think the Penn Barstool arrangement was actually a good idea, and it just wasn't really executed against properly. I'd say the three biggest differences. So most importantly, the product was undifferentiated, right? It was kind of like a suboptimal version of FanDuel and DraftKings, and most of their customers already knew about FanDuel and DraftKings. So when you're talking about like your bankroll and placing money, you know, on gambling activities, you're going to use the product that you have the most trust in, that you feel safest with, that has the most betting options, and you know the Canby powered Barstool Sportsbook just wasn't competitive enough with that. So I think there was just a lack of product differentiation. So that's one. I think the biggest insight that I've also learned along the way from a distribution standpoint in this category is it's not, I think they overestimated the ability to just organically convert audience to product, because there's a conflict, there's sort of a tension there where like the objective of your media business is not to shove product down the consumer's throat, but it's to make your brand cool. Yep. And if you're shoving product down consumers' throats is like the only way you're going to get customers, you're kind of sabotaging yourself. So, but what I underestimated with Betr is this brand halo effect that media and content provides, so that when we put paid behind what we're doing and we pursue performance marketing, we get best-in-class customer acquisition economics to the point where it's like a pretty unfair advantage for our business, where, you know, if you're on TikTok or Instagram and you see a Betr ad, it's almost like an advertisement disguised as organic content, and that's highly, highly, highly scalable. They didn't do a good enough job of emphasizing paid performance marketing. And then the third thing I would point to is there was just like a lack of operational sort of alignment and cohesion. So, you know, you have content team in New York or wherever they are, you have the gaming team that's in Pennsylvania or wherever they are, then you have most of the people building the product in Sweden or wherever Canby is. So there wasn't like a united front that was really having the content team with the product team and vice versa. Whereas with Betr, we have everybody working together in person, predominantly in Miami. We're in a big warehouse. We have our content creation factory on one side, our gaming product development team on the other side, and we're highly collaborative and we're united. So there's that operational and cultural advantage that I think we've learned from and benefited from as well.
So just fair to say that operators that are looking to tap into these younger audiences need to do a better job of leveraging content and social platforms?
Yeah, no, 100%, yeah.
Joey, appreciate all the time and the insight, man. This was great.
All right, thanks for having me.